The stream has started. It's Sunday afternoon. This is a really odd thing. I don't really stream very much on Sunday afternoons. And there's a very special reason why. I'm just going to take a second and let all the channels populate, because we're pretty much going to all my platforms at this point. We're going to Facebook, both Facebook profiles. We're going to YouTube. So, hey there if you're watching on YouTube. We're also on Twitter/X. I haven't live cast there in probably a year, maybe. Jeez, it's been a while. And then we're also going live to Twitch. That's a mixed bag of hurt. We'll see how that goes. I haven't live streamed to Twitch in quite a while. But the reason why I'm live streaming on a Sunday is that today we're launching, doing the official launch of my brand new audio engineering course site. So if you wanted to learn a lot of the tips and tricks and things that I do here in my studio every single week and have for more than 25 years at this point. If you want to learn how to do that kind of stuff, get great mixes, well, heck, let's just flip right over there and let you see the new site. So this is FaderJocksPro.com. You know, there's a FaderJocks.com. That's the podcast. That's coming back real soon. We've got new episodes of those coming soon. There's already some great episodes up there if you want to listen. But this is the new site, and has tons of information about what you're going to get. And you see some of the courses that we're offering. And there is an all-access membership that has some extra perks in it, including weekly live streams. We're right in the middle of coding a student community, kind of like a Facebook group, but on the platform. That should be ready in the next week or two so that students can talk with each other and get answers to questions, get some dialogue going between folks that are enrolled in courses. The weekly live streams and the archive of those is super duper important. Here's some nice things that some people I know and have worked with have said about me. There's a link to the podcast. If you haven't listened to the podcast, it's just the Fader Jocks podcast at FaderJocks.com. You can listen for free. There's several episodes up there now. There is the ability to get some one-on-one coaching. We're not going to talk about that today. And if you got any questions, all that stuff is there. But the reason why we're talking about this is the courses that are up there. So I filmed some other courses for my previous Patreon site, and we brought those over to this site. So you see them here, this Beach Rock song, Mixing Masterclass number 2. I see a typo I need to change there. And then leveling up with the Waves SSL EV2. I do some mixing with the Waves SSL EV2. That's a mouthful. Channel strip. And you can get that course as well. It's a great primer if you have just started using that channel strip. It's one of my favorite channel strips. It's one of the two I use on almost every mix. And then we also ported over my Drummer's Home Studio Bootcamp Masterclass from the Drum Corner site. If you're one of my drum students from Drum Corner, we're right in the middle of revamping that entire site. It's going to take probably till the end of the summer, but we're going to roll that out again with brand new lessons, brand new courses, brand new live streams, brand new tons of things. We're on a brand new platform that gives us a lot more things we can do. But the class that's brand new, that I just finished filming a few weeks ago, that just went live today, is the Mixing Masterclass on Contemporary Country Song. And that's really how I'm choosing to do all of these courses, is very genre specific on a song. So next week we're filming one on a heavier rock tune. I'll be doing some EDM masterclasses. We've got some folk and unplugged music. We got some live stuff that how to mix tunes from live recordings. There's going to be different master classes really on different use cases, because a lot of the techniques I use are completely different from project to project. They're very much sort of tailored to what the project needs. I don't really have one particular mix template that I open for everything that I work on. I just find that every song's different, and I kind of need to start from scratch. A lot of the same tools end up getting used, but that's another another thing for another day. Anyway, so what we're really launching today is this mixing masterclass number 1. You're going to get more than 4 hours worth of incredible tips and tricks that can help you make your mixes sound retail ready. There's a whole thing here that really tells you what we talk about and how the lessons are broken down. You can kind of see there's basically there's 9 lessons, video lessons, and you can watch the bass mixing one for free if you want. So if you go over to the site now and you want to watch the bass mixing masterclass, it's just right there. You can watch it for free and get an idea of what the class structure is like. It really is like sitting in the room with me as we're talking about things. A lot of these master classes going forward are not just going to be a bunch of videos, but we're actually going to include downloadable files so that you can practice this stuff. Now, the thing that's different about this site versus a lot of there's some really good audio engineering training sites out there. And I've got subscriptions to most of them. And a lot of the problem with the ones that I've seen is they're mock-up courses where it's someone who writes and engineers their own stuff and then puts a course up about how to mix the tune that they wrote and that they recorded themselves and played everything on. And it's very... these are all, I don't want to disparage anybody's courses. Everybody should be able to put courses up. No, these are all real world tunes. These are tunes that I've had to mix over the last 25 years. I'm going to show you one today. We're going to do a few things that actually came from an actual session, got released on an album. And so that's one of the things that differentiates Fader Jocks Pro from a lot of other audio engineering training sites, is that when it comes to the studio side of things, all the projects that we're going to be using for our courses are all real world projects that came from real world clients. I want you to see how I do the stuff that I do and have been now for over 25 years at this point. There's also a section here in the bottom. You'll only see this last section if you're logged in and enrolled in the course. There's a whole question section where students can leave questions, and I'll answer those on the site. Like I said, we are putting a student community together, and it should be up in the next few weeks, where students can go in if they're taking a particular course and talk with other students. They can talk with me. They can post links to their own mixes that they're working on. And as we post files that students can practice their mixes on, you'll be able to post your mixes for me to listen to and give some advice about, and you'll be able to also let other students hear those things, so you guys can swap stories, swap tips, and help each other out. It really is. We're going to build a community here on Fader Jocks Pro that I think is going to be great for people that are recording enthusiasts. Now, eventually, we're going to open this entire side. This is going to be the studio side of the site. Eventually, we're going to add a bunch of live audio and a lot of those classes and tutorials. That's coming later. If you also look at the Fader Jocks site, we've started something that's kind of new for me. We're going to have a products section, and it's going to be full of all kinds of different things. Turn my Do Not Disturb on. The first product that we're rolling out is something I put together last year, which is a sample pack. So this is 130 audio files from an amazing Gretsch, vintage Gretsch kit and a bell brass snare that we recorded here, and you get all kinds of different samples. That's sort of a new side of the house, something that I'm going to be leaning into more this year with products. So we're going to be doing sample packs. We're going to do some loop packs. We're going to do eventually plugins. We're going to design some plugins that we can sell through the site as well. That's the plan for that section. And again, if you get the All Access Pass, you get access for a low monthly fee. You get access to the entire course catalog. You'll get weekly live streams, all that stuff. Have I sold it enough for you? I hope so. I don't want to push this too dang hard, because that's only part of the reason why we're here today. And but it's the Mixing Masterclass that I really want to point you towards. That's the first course that I put together specifically for this site, and you're going to get a ton of stuff out of that. Now, right now, the price on this, I believe, is $39.95, and you can't see it because I have this up right this second. Let me get rid of this. There you go. So if you'll use the code launch25 when you go to pick up that masterclass, you'll get 25% off that masterclass. So it'll be under $30 for over 4 hours worth of training. If you were to come here to my studio and work one-on-one with me, that would be over $400 worth of value that you get. It costs you over $400 to spend a half day with me, basically. But you can do that for under $30 if you'll use that promo code. It's right there in the bottom of your screen. Launch25 is the promo code. I'm super excited about this. I really am very, very excited to finally have this. This is something that's been on my whiteboard for years that I've wanted to do, and finally making it a real thing. And it's just taken a long time. That's all. But anyway, yeah, if you'll look down in the corner there, you'll see that Launch25. You can get 25% off that first mixing class. And I didn't want to just jump on here today and just try and sell you something. I want to be of value to you. So we're also going to sit today, and I'm going to take a mix. Again, this is a real world mix. Came from a real world client. We did this album, gosh, now at this point, almost 20 years ago. So this is a tune that we tracked at my very first studio that was over in Duluth. A few people that are watching this right now probably remember that studio. Our main console at the time was a Mackie 8 bus, if you guys remember those things. Most of our mic pre's, in fact, most of the mic pre's that this stuff was recorded through were those Mackie 8 bus pre's. And they did a good job, man. I kept that 8 bus for probably about 7 years until it moved into this studio that I'm at when we moved in 2006. We opened that first studio in 1999. 2000, we moved to our Buford Highway location in Duluth. Some of you guys remember that one. That 8 bus followed me there. It followed all the way to this location back in 2006, and eventually it got replaced by a Toft audio console for a few years. And then once I went to the external mic pre's, we got 40 channels of external mic pre's here. Then I went to control surfaces and that stuff. That's a whole different story. But that's to give you an idea that when we made this record originally, almost 20 years ago, I just had really a garden variety of different kinds of tools to work with. The overheads that we used, I think, were like Rode NT1s. Obviously, we used a D112 on the kick, an SM57 on the snare. There's no toms on this track, so we have no toms. That hi-hat mic is either an SM57 or it might have been an Octava small diaphragm condenser mic that I had at the time. All this percussion was recorded with an NT1, I would imagine. Bass was just DI. Electric guitars, probably, I bet those were SM57s. And the organ, which is a mono organ, was just a keyboard. And then all those lead vocals were recorded with a Rode NT1 into a DBX, whatever their channel strip was. I can't remember the number of it. It's not 357 or something, but for a while back in the late 90s, early 2000s, DBX made a channel strip that had, they may still make it, I don't know, had a 12AX7 based tube mic pre in it, as well as a compressor and an EQ. And for a long time, for probably the first 5 years that I was recording, that was my vocal channel strip. That was my vocal signal path until I got better mics, probably the early 2000s. But the financial commitment that it took to make this record was not a whole lot. And still we ended up with something that sounded pretty good. So I'm going to throw a set of cans on today because while I'm talking to you, I'm also trying something out. We're going to talk about this later. But there's a lot of mixing plugins out there that where you can use headphones nowadays. And so I've actually got one of those strapped across this. So you're going to hear what I'm hearing. Now, if you've got a set of these Beyerdynamic headphones, this will be perfect for you. Otherwise, the mix may be a little different. I don't know. We're going to see. This is really the first time that I've used this Abbey Road plug-in, and I went ahead and I put it on your feed as well. So if you've got a set of these headphones, throw them on. That way you can hear what I'm hearing as we're doing this. Let me play this mix for you. And this is, you can tell in the mixer, there's nothing on this. All I'm doing right this second, or what I did right before we started the web stream, was I just did a little bit of a balance mix. I panned a few things, did some balancing stuff, just to get us in the ballpark of where we need to go. So I'm going to hit play on this, and let's take a listen to it. There you go. That's just a dry mix of the stuff that we recorded. So if I'm going to give you a tip or a trick today, to start with, it's probably the most valuable thing. It's going to be this. Make sure that what you get down on tape into your DAW, make sure it sounds the way you want it to sound. Make sure it's a great sound. I have a button now, and when I have to burp or cough, so I won't inform you when I do that. I'll just mute myself. Anyway, I had to burp, sorry. Yeah, my first tip or trick for you is you need to make sure that when you're recording this stuff that don't treat anything as if you can fix it in the mix. I had a mix that someone sent me last week that had a lot of problems with it. Kick drum sounds that, in their mix that they had done in their home studio, they jumped through all kinds of hoops with all kinds of plugins to try and fix what's going on. Who's this? One Finnish girl. I can't say that because it's in purple on a dark background, but hey there. Thanks for tuning in to the live web stream. Anyway, so they had this kick drum sound that they obviously didn't like, because by chaining 8 different plugins together, they were trying to get a completely different kick drum sound. So when I pulled all that stuff off and listened to it, it was an okay kick drum sound, but it wasn't the kick drum sound that person intended. So that's my first piece of advice for you with this mixing stuff is make sure that you capture the sound that you want to work with, because you really are not going to be able to manipulate this stuff. As great as plugins are, as great as technology is at this point, you're really going to do yourself a disservice if you're trying to manipulate the things that you're working on heavily with plugins to completely transform the sound. Maybe you won't notice the problem in one singular track, but when you stack all of this stuff on top of each other, you're going to end up with a mix that's just not going to sound great. It's just not. The one mantra, and you learn it in this master class that's up on faderjockspro.com now, is the one mantra that I always tell people is don't do anything you don't have to do. But that requires that you capture the sound that you want in the first place. Or I tell people I get at least 80% of the way with the sound that I'm recording. That other 20% is the sweetening. And really it's probably more like user is the one Finnish girl. Oh, okay, hey, you're the only Finnish girl on the entire Twitch, on all of Twitch. You're the only one. Okay. Anyway, thanks for joining us. Thanks for being on the web stream. I appreciate you. If you got any questions, you can just type them in the box there. Anyway, so that's going to be the biggest thing that's going to improve your mixes immediately is make sure you get the sound you're looking for. Whether it's a kick drum or a bass guitar or a vocal, if the vocal that you're recording if it's not bright enough, there's some things that you can do to make it brighter. But if it's boxy and tubby and muffled, then all of the work in the world is not going to make it a pristine sounding, clear, crystal clear vocal. You're always going to have some kind of problems with it. So that's the one thing I'll say about this mix. Even 20 years after we did this recording, this is the sounds that we intended to get, and we didn't use really expensive gear to get. The vocal mic that we used, that we also used on all the percussion, and we used at some other point. I'll bet you that hi-hat might have been that NT1. It's a $200 mic. It's not an expensive mic. SM57. Not an expensive microphone, but it sounds great on those guitar cabinets. We got the sound we were looking for, and it sounds great on that snare drum. So let me show you one of the things that I do when I'm setting up my mix template. Only one. Well, that's the wonderful thing. We're all one of one, right? There's only one of us. On most of my social profiles now, I've put the Brian Stevens, and part of it's for brand. Part of my friends get a kick out of that because they're like, "There's a lot of Brian Stevenses out there." I'm like, "Yeah, but I'm the Brian Stevens." It's only one like me, that's for sure. Anyway, so let's look at this. Let's look at this entire mix, the way it's set up. So initially, one of the things that I do is in Pro Tools, I begin to put things into routing folders. So you'll notice that all of these drums are in one routing folder. If I hit this, it'll actually close up and it'll disappear. You won't see it. All the percussion we've got in another routing folder. Bass guitar, since it's a single channel, there's only one of those. With the guitars, they're out separate, but if I've got multiple tracks of guitar, if I've got 6, 8, 10 tracks of electric guitar, they all end up going into a routing folder themselves. And then if we would have had more lead vocal tracks and more double vocal tracks, those would have gotten grouped as well. But and one of the reasons I do that is because a lot of the mixes I have to do now, we have to do what's called stem mixing. So I have to be able to separate that mix out into different groups. I've got a mix that I'm sending off this week that it's set up where there's 8 groups of things. And so we run an entire mix. But then we also run the mix of the stems, drums, percussion, bass, keyboards, guitars, and I think there's a vocal on there, lead vocal and background vocal stems. And that has all of the effects and the stuff that we use to process each one of those individual stems. So when they're mastering, if they need to bump the lead vocal a little bit, they can just bump the lead vocal in the stem. If they need to pull back an instrument, maybe for some reason as they're mastering, the bass is a little loud, then they can just pull that back as they're doing the mastering. So not my favorite way of doing it, but that's how people are doing it these days. So not a whole lot of tracks. And routing is super important. So let's take a look. I'll show you. We're not going to mix this entire tune. What are you usually streaming about? This is pretty much everything that I stream about is stuff in the studio generally. Occasionally I'll stream some live gig stuff, but it's such a pain to try and get a great sound on a live gig that most of the time we're just streaming here from the studio. So we're either streaming as I'm sitting here in my control room here. We're either streaming, talking about this kind of stuff, mixing, mastering, those things, or in either one of the live rooms, like I'll be behind a drum kit, or maybe I'm in the vocal booth, or if I have a client and we're web streaming a session. Some of my clients will let us web stream a session for some of the students. So, so we've got cameras in each one of the rooms. No. Feel free to ask any questions. That's one of the reasons why we put the live stream up on Twitch today. Is it so people that aren't aware of this channel and the stuff we're doing here can know about it. Thanks for asking your questions. I appreciate you. No stupid questions. Any of my students will tell you, no stupid questions. There are no stupid questions. So let's take a look at this kick drum just a second, and I'm going to solo this out. I'm going to put this in loop so that so we don't have to keep doing stop and rewind and all these different things. All right, so part of what we're going to do with this kick drum is sort of the first stage that I use in almost every single mix, and there's a lot of plugins on here, man, is I usually put some kind of harmonic treatment on things. So in this case, because this is sort of a band thing and we want it to sound like a band song, tape is incredibly important to the sound of the history of recording. I mean, most of the albums that you love from the last 50 years were recorded on tape. And even a lot of the newer albums of the last 20 years will do things like what we're doing today, and they'll use either plugins to emulate the harmonics of tape, or before I was using this plugin, I used to keep a reel of 2-inch tape down at Southern Tracks Studio, and we'd track something here, and I would just send that off to Southern Tracks. We'd FTP it up to a server. They'd bounce everything through their tape machine and send me the files back, and then we'd start working from there. So tape has always been important. Oh, I don't know that you've heard this. This song's 20-something years old at this point, but yeah, it's been out for a long time. I'm going to use a preset. The presets for this Universal Audio Studer plugin, the presets are great. And we're going to go with... Now, it helps if you know what these tape formulas do. It helps if you know what the different tape speeds do. But the thing I'd encourage you to do is just to put one on and listen to it. And you're going to hear subtle differences between... each of these tape formulas, each of these machine settings. Most people would go to this kick drum setting automatically, but that's not what I'm going to use. We're going to go over here to country. This is using a 250 formula of tape. I am going to open this machine and turn the noise off. That's the one thing, no matter if I'm starting up something from scratch or I'm using a preset, I always turn the noise off on this because it doesn't add anything to the sound other than tape hiss. Now, the one thing I am going to do, hopefully you'll hear the difference, is I'm going to go to 30 IPS because I feel like I get a little more low end, a little bit better sound at 30 IPS. So now you'll notice that we're driving the input just a little bit and compensating on the back end of that. It kind of eats into our headroom if we come out too loud out of this plug-in. So we're coming back a little bit off of that plug-in. And this is something for you to think about right now, since the other thing that I do a lot is when I start mixing, I actually start with my faders back. This is something I haven't put in a course yet. So I'll start with all my routing folders and my groups. I'll start with them at 0, and I'll start with my my mix bus and my master bus at 0. But generally, when I'm starting to put my balance mix together, which I've already done at this point, I actually back all my faders off to -5. It started because I was doing a lot of mixes on 80 to 150 tracks, and so I wanted to make sure that I had plenty of headroom. It's just a practice I got into that made sure that I always had enough headroom on my mix bus. So anyway, so we'll start back there at that. Now, for now, that until we start stacking things in, that's going to make that kick drum really soft for you. So I'm going to bring it back up for now. All right, so now that we've got that plug-in happening, if you want to hear this without that plug-in, with it. So it helps with the attack a little bit, and it seems to bring the attack out. But what it's doing is it's rounding off the attack a little bit, and so by rounding off the attack, it's making the attack sound more prominent or fatter. So that's one of the benefits of using tape and hitting the tape hard enough that you're getting up into the red on the VUs. Is that all of a sudden, like, listen as I. And if I go too far, you'll hear it. You hear how it's distorting now? That's definitely too far. But there's a sweet spot for this input where we hit the tape just hard enough that we start to roll the edges off of the attack, so that makes it fatter and wider. All right, so now the channel strip plugin, you'll notice here on my settings, oh, you know what? It lost that. I'm going to show you something while we're working on this. Yeah, I just updated my Pro Tools, and apparently it changed this. So if you go into Preferences, if you want to speed up your workflow, there's a place here where you can choose default EQ and default dynamics. And you can even put them in an insert slot, but I don't do that. So instead of treating this like a default EQ and a default dynamics plugin, what I'll do is I'll pick my two favorite channel strips. So my favorite channel strip is going to be, it should be in this. Come on. Oh, it's going to be in an O, not, yeah. All right, well, let's see it. Oh, okay, interesting. Interesting, it's not there. Oh, you know what it's doing? Now, this is something that they've changed, and I'll definitely send them. So now it's making me go to an actual EQ. There is a channel strip in there. There's a channel strip right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and get around this. Let's see if I can find my other one. My other favorite one is this SSL EV2. EV2. So I'm going to put that in that first slot. Now let's see if I can find this Schoeps Omni channel over here. Now, if I'm missing it, somebody can tell me I'm missing it. Omnipressor. No. You notice everything here has some kind of dynamics in it. Ah, there it is, Schoeps Omni channel. All right. So what that does when you're using that, I use this function like, what are my two favorite plugins that I use all the time? So now when I do that, I don't have to go into my list every time. I don't have to search every time. When I pull it up, there it goes right there. So we're going to use the Schoeps Omni channel. This is my favorite channel strip plugin. And come on, wake up. Oh, let me do one other thing. Yeah, it's still set up for tracking. There we go. So now we're going to use this Schoeps Omni channel. I'm going to get a little more saturation here out of the preamp circuit. This is an interesting experience listening through headphones because I normally don't mix on headphones. And I'm going to add a little, about 2 dB of that, this thump circuit. But I am going to use some high pass. I'm going to high pass around 55. I'd normally maybe high pass a little higher on an inside kick drum mic, but this is the only kick drum channel that we have, so I don't want to go up too far. Then we're going to look at this gate and expander. If you listen to that sound, you hear the bleed from the snare drum, right? So that's going to be a little off axis, and it may color the sound of the snare drum. So the first thing I do is I kind of, so I start to use, I don't use the gate, I use the expander. It's a little gentler on the release of it. And so I'm going to set my attack as fast as I can go with it. And then I'm going to play around with a couple of things. I'm going to play around with the floor. You notice as I have the floor higher, I get more of the bleed. With the floor lower, I get less of the bleed after the expander turns things down. So I'm going to go kind of, shorten up the release a little bit. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to audibly time the close of the expander. If it goes too quick, if all this stuff is set too fast, it really does a great job of getting rid of that snare drum, but it also makes for a very unnatural sound. We want something that has a little bit of a tail. So I'm going to ease up on this. You can hear where that snare drum starts to come back a little bit. The attack of that snare drum comes back, but it's down. So that's where I'm going to kind of stay. That way I get the majority of the kick drum sound. And if anything, it gives me a nice little fade taper at the end of it instead of just cutting it off hard. So it makes it, it really controls the decay and sustain of the kick drum. All right, so I'm going to have to put something in line here before I can move this. So let's see if we can find one of my favorite compressors. Now, when you decide to compress something, you really have kind of a choice. There are compressors that just do the job of compressing. And all they do is exactly what you want them to do. When something goes above the threshold, it reduces the volume above that threshold. It compresses the dynamic range. And most of your stock compressors that come in any of these DAWs, or some of the more vanilla compressors like the Waves, Renaissance compressor, depending on what mode you run it in, or just the regular old Waves compressor, just Comp 1 or whatever they call it. Those just do the utility job of just compressing. They don't really add a whole lot other than what kind of coloration you get from compressing, like fattening up the sound by kind of softening the edges of the attack. But then there's a whole other family of compressors like this 1176 that, especially if you drive them pretty hard, you can actually get something out of them sonically. And so with this 1176, the thing I like about the 1176 is it makes everything just sound more exciting that comes through it. And in this case, I'm going to hit it. I'm getting as much as 3 dB. You adjust how much compression you're getting on these kind of compressors by the input. And so, because it doesn't have a threshold, the threshold's fixed on this. So you drive the input to get more compression, and then to make up the gain on the back end so that I don't lose any overall volume, that's what we use the output for. So real quick, I'm using the Blackie as opposed to the Bluey. There's two different versions of this. So that's without it, and this is with it. I've tried to level match it as best I can in these phones so that volume doesn't trick me into thinking what's better or worse. So it's definitely managing the attack. It's managing the performance a little bit, keeping the volume about in the same place. And then we're going to do some EQ on this. Not going to really touch the low end, but what I am going to do is I'm going to go down here in sort of that 250, 300 range. I'm going to let you hear it because your ear may not be tuned enough to hear this yet, but there's some trash in like that 300-ish range that's just not usable at all. And notice I'm using the tone. I could use the mid sweep or the mid band on this. I'm going to use the tone. I sort of treat these like high and low mid circuits. But listen to this. That's not the one I want to do. I want to do the low mid. Sorry about that. All right, so this is you hear that sound. I'm just going to kind of get that out of there. It's a pitch. And depending on how large the slope is I'm using on here, I can get just the pitch out, or I can actually kind of pull things around that. There's an overall boxiness. Listen to this. Notice if I'm using a much broader sweep on it, then I'm catching a lot of a lot of frequencies. All right. So now I'm just getting out that stuff I don't like. And you notice all I'm doing is just some subtractive EQ. Now, because we only use one microphone, I do want to add some attack back. So somewhere between 1 and 2K. I'm going to put it in parametric with a pretty sharp Q. And we're just going to add back about 3 dB of that click. You hear the click all of a sudden, right? Just all of a sudden it comes back. Now, one quick thing I'm going to do now that we put this in, let me move this over. I want to move this to, come on, where's the magic? Where's the magic thing here? It's the one thing that I always, there it goes. I'm going to move this to before my EQ. All right. And then just I mean, you can look at the meters now and tell that it pretty well manages the performance, but I want to manage that back end a little bit since I don't have a sub and I don't want to use a sample to give me more fatness. I'm actually going to use the compressor to do that. So we're going to go longer attack, longer release, and we're going to throw it in an optical circuit. Now, the thing about this channel strip is you've got 4 different varieties of compressor. And the great thing is you can kind of switch in between them and the settings adjust themselves so that you're really just hearing the difference in the compressors. So you have to, there's a little bit of a learning curve for this particular circuit because they act a little, like this acts a little differently than I would expect something like an 1176 to act because of the way that they sort of slew everything to work where you can just kind of change from one to another. But I'm going to use this optical circuit because it's slower, and I'm going to bring this threshold down. And it's going to bring back a lot of the back end of the note, the punch of the note. Now, I've got a choice here because I've got this mix knob. If I wanted to overdo it a little bit and bring back a little of the attack, I could mix in the attack. I'm not going to overdo it at all. All right, so here's without all that processing. So we got a punchier, fatter kick drum, and we don't have nearly as much just overall bleed. It's not just the snare drum bleed. There's a little bit of pedal noise in there. There's a little bit of ambience that we just don't need. We get rid of it. Boom, there you go. So now let's put that back into the mix. I'm going to back this back down to that -5. If anything, let's turn this off. Now, I can't really level match it. I have to do that sort of manually. So sort of memorize that sound for a second. So that's the kick drum without processing. Here's it with the processing. Telephone doesn't work too well in here. Yeah. So there you go. It's a much better kick drum sound, right? It's just more focused. It's focused, it's punchier, it's got a little more low end. And that way now I don't have to use a sample to give me the things that kick drum sound might have been missing. All right, so I'm just going to copy this. Now you notice it brings the volume up automatically. And actually, I did something. I'm going to pull this back up. All right, so we'll start from scratch on the snare drum, doing the exact same thing. You can do this in solo or you can do it in the mix. For me, I do different parts of this at different ways. There's not a lot of low end that's coming through that mic, thank goodness. But I am going to put a high pass on this. Because now I can't tell in these headphones necessarily. I can definitely tell when I have them in my speakers. I can hear or feel in that sub if there's some weirdness going on. Real quick, I'm going to let you listen to this. So I've got this Abbey Road plug-in on that's sort of calibrated to these headphones. And this is the first time I've tried this today. So normally I'm mixing in speakers, or I'm using my Session Ace earbuds that basically they're tuned to sound like a set of studio reference monitors with a sub. So I know that things are pretty true when I'm listening to there. So real quick, I'm going to bypass this plugin. Now on that one thing, I don't hear a whole lot of difference in this plugin. On the kick drum, I heard a lot more low end. All right, so let's go through this. So I'm using a little bit of that saturation. Well, not a little bit. I'm going about halfway up. I don't want it to sound like it's got a distortion pedal on it, but I am getting a fair amount of saturation on it. I'm not going to use the thump circuit on here. We're going to use the expander, and let me take you through that same process with the expander. So if I've got the floor set too high, I'm not going to get a lot of this expander kicking in. Hit the attack as fast as I can get it. Now I'm going to listen to the attack of the bass drum. Now you notice if I set the release too quick, we're still hearing the kick drum, but all of a sudden it drops in volume dramatically with a little bit of air between that drop and the sound of the attack of the kick drum. So after the snare drum, if you listen, when my release is too quick, you'll actually hear dot, and it'll immediately drop the sound before the attack. So what I'm doing is I'm kind of timing my release trying to hide that expander inside of the attack of the kick drum, and then I'll soften it up a little bit. And the thing that you'll notice is the overring on the snare drum. That's part of what I'm trying to control the length of. So when I put it back in the mix, so even without EQ, I can get rid of some of that overring that I don't want. We could have probably taped up the snare drum a lot more, but then all of a sudden that just would have made the snare drum sound boxier. So you need that, when you're recording it, you need the openness of the drum, but then there's techniques you can use between EQ and expansion. Sometimes if I just shave off the back part of that overring, it becomes a lot less evident in the mix. And I haven't touched the EQ very much at all. It's the length of it that's offensive to me. It's not the overring itself. It's the fact that it just rings over a couple of beats. I want it to be a lot more controlled than that. All right. So that same thing we did before, I'm gonna go ahead and just pull this in. Oh, that's right. They didn't fix this yet. So that's one thing I don't like about this channel strip. I wish they would fix. You can't put that over somewhere other than where it comes in the lineup until you put a plug-in on it. Now that I've got a plug-in on it, now I can move it over. All right, so I'm going to fast attack. Go all the way over on the release. I'm going to back off just a little bit. It sounds good just like it is out of the box, but... So here, you don't hear it do that thing where it makes it more exciting. But the second I start to get into like 3 dB of compression, then it starts to do that thing where it's exciting all of a sudden. So that's without it. Notice how all of a sudden that overring goes away even more. It's a lot more focused. Now all I want to do is, now we've got, I mean, that's already, I could use that. That's already kind of where I want it. But I want to open up the top a little bit on this thing. So I'm going to just open it up on the high shelf about 9.5K. Just a little bit. And now I'm just kind of going for the sound of it. You can drive the output a little bit and get a certain kind of thing out of it. So now that things are getting a little bit louder, I am going to rebalance a few things. At least from my headphones here. All right. So real quick, I'll take out the stuff we just did. Nope, that's not what I wanted to do. So it's kind of balanced about right. The balance is about the same. But check it out. When I put that stuff back in, now I'm going to have to drop it in because it's a little louder. But listen to the quality of the sound. Just the quality of the sound is so much better. So it was already 80% of the way there. We just needed to manage a few things. And we need to shape the sound a little bit. That's all I'm really doing. Now I'll take it out of this verse loop for a second. Let's get it into like a verse chorus loop. We'll go a little bit longer in terms of time. Cool. I do want to look at one more thing here on the live stream because we're already almost an hour into this. A couple things I want to remind you. The brand new mixing course is up at FaderJocksPro.com. It's Mixing Masterclass number 1. So if you go over to FaderJocksPro.com, I'm going to learn to say that a little bit better. FaderJocksPro.com. If you go over there and you enter the code LAUNCH25, it'll take 25% off of that course price, and it'll only work on that course. It doesn't work on the other courses. It's just the one that we're rolling out today, this brand new mixing masterclass, and it'll take 25% off. You'll get over 4 hours of training for under $30. It would cost you over $400 to sit with me doing this stuff for over 4 hours. But you can do that for under $30 if you do that. The experience is just like this, except I'm probably talking to you on the camera a lot more. So anyway, I want to do one more thing as we're going through this. I want to show you a problem. Now, this is something that we should have caught when we recorded this, but we didn't. Notice something. So right now, those overheads, you see the snare drum the attack on that snare drum is a whole lot louder in the left side than the right side, right? What that's going to cause is a couple of problems. It's going to cause an issue with the centering of the kick and snare drum because we're gonna hear more of the overhead snare over here. So it really is gonna sort of decouple the drum sound. We're using drum sets are interesting, an interesting animal to mix because we're not using one microphone to capture the entire thing. We're using multiple microphones on this multi-instrument. The drum set is really a collection of instruments. And so it's kind of unnatural that we would put mics on all these individual instruments and expect that that's going to sound without any work at all, that it's just going to sound like it sounds when we're standing 10 feet in front of it. It's not how it works. So there are a lot of considerations that we have to sort of put into the mixing all of these different microphones, from volume and balance to panning and phase. All those things are really important. Timing. So I'm not using any kind of auto alignment tools today to make sure that all this stuff is perfectly in phase. It sounds pretty well in phase, but this is a problem. The fact that the left side microphone is bringing so much of the snare drum in compared to the right side. Now, this is one of those where the obvious fix may not be the right fix. Okay, so I'm looking at the peaks, but here's the other thing that I'm looking at. Look at what happens in between the peaks. Look at the volume difference. The volume difference between everything that happens between the peaks is a lot less of a difference than the actual attack of that snare drum. So if I only pick one way to fix this, I'm probably not doing what I need to do to repair this problem. And that's one of the other things that a lot of people that send home studio mixes to me need, is they need someone to go in and do a little bit of doctoring. And so what I want to do, if I just bring up the right side, it might bring in the snare drum towards the center more, because I'm going to take this snare drum and I'm going to get the peak volume closer to the same on both sides. So the attack is probably going to slide to the middle. But that's not addressing the inside of the note at all, or the inside of the sound, which the volume of those things is not nearly as desperate. So what I really need to do is I need to fix two things. I need to rebalance the volume a little bit on the right side to bring it up, so that everything that happens in between those snare drum hits is more equal, so that I get an equal right to left balance of the whole kit. But then I need to do something to manage that attack. So here's what I'm going to do. And there's a couple of different ways I can do this, but this is probably the quickest, the easiest, and the one that's going to make sense to most people. I'm going to split to mono. All right, so I'm going to take that stereo track and I'm going to make it 2 mono tracks. And then I'm going to hide, make, and active what we just did. Now, what that's going to allow me to do at this point is that's going to allow me to have separate control of each of these channels. Okay, so now I could do this in a plug-in, but I'm actually, because of Pro Tools, I'm going to do this in the actual this little guy here in the left corner of the waveform. I'm going to bring this volume up. It looks like about maybe 2.5 or 3 dB, and visually I'm going to try and match those, and then I'm going to listen to it. And again, realize that the snare drum's still going to be coming out of one side a little bit more than the other. But I'm just going to listen to this for a second. And I'll crank this up so we can hear this a little bit more. I just realized I have my headphones on backwards because I heard it. It's supposed to be in the left. So when I hear the kick drum, here's what I'm listening for. I'm hearing the kick drum, and it's mostly in the center at this point. And in this case, I'm listening from drummer. This was recorded drummer perspective because the hi-hat is in the left side. For me, it's in the left side. I want it audience perspective. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the panning on this. Cool. So now I've changed the panning on this because I want this to be audience perspective, not drummer perspective. That's a personal preference for me. Other people want to mix it other ways. It just makes more sense to be mixed that way. So when I listen to everything except the attack of the snare drum, the room tone that I'm hearing is more even across the left and right, and the kick drum is more centered. But because now I have more attack of the snare drum in the right side, the snare drum sound shifted over. So we're going to fix that. And we're going to fix it two ways. Well, you know what? Let's fix that and then do the other thing I want to do. So this is where we're going to use one of our, just our pedestrian, non-colored options. This should not add too much tone color. When I talk about color, I'm talking about tone color. So I'm just going to grab a C1. All right. So we're going to put this at, we'll set it at 3-1. My attack, we're going to start 10 milliseconds. I'm going to open that release up a little bit. Definitely need to EQ that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the threshold of this down. Until I feel like I'm getting the snare drum back into the middle of this mix. And you notice if you look at the meters, because you need to use your ears and your eyes. You don't want your ears to trick you into what you think is happening. The meters are good because they let us know what's really happening here. Remember, I'm just trying to manage the attack of the snare drum. So I'm going to adjust the release so that this compressor really is just working on the attack, that initial part of the sound. And why didn't you loop that time? Probably because I didn't have it in highlight mode. So I'm making that adjustment. And as I'm making that adjustment, I'm listening to the adjustment. Let's make sure that these faders are balanced. So for where I'm sitting with these headphones, it works even better when you're actually, when you've got a well-tuned room, you're actually listening to the speakers, because you'll actually feel it move to the center. What was over here, over there, wherever it was out of alignment, will slowly move to the middle. And I'll get it as close to the middle as I can get it without dramatically affecting everything else. So that's all that compressor is doing. It's just trying to manage that attack. You see it's still a little bit louder, but not nearly as much. Now, if I need to, and I don't really want to, but if I need to, I can also manage this now with a little bit of a volume ramp. If that helps, now at this point, I feel like I've gotten it to where I've got enough of it knocked down where I'm not dramatically affecting the sound of the snare drum in the overheads. If I need to goose that a little bit, another dB over here, then I'll do that. All right, so now when it comes to processing these overheads, now that I've split them, I need to put them back together. I could do some stuff to them individually, like I could do all my processing on individual channels, but I want to make sure that now as I'm processing these, that I work on them together. So I'm going to build an aux track. We're going to put it in the drums. Let's just pick a bus to put them into. We'll put them in bus 1, 2, because that's easy to find. And then I'm going to send, instead of sending this left and right over to my drums, we're going to send them first to my drum stereo. Great. Cool. So now all my processing I'm going to do on this bus as well. Now I could copy that plugin over, but I want you to see this again. I want you to see as I do things. Instead of just hitting Alt and drag and putting it over there, I want you to see it. So we're going to grab that Studer. And we're going to start with that same preset. 30 IPs. You hear immediately that tape formula automatically gave me some brightness. So this is one of those where the tape is actually kind of acting like an EQ of sorts. Now, if you notice, our peaks are a lot closer together. We're within a dB most of the time. So now, effectively, we've got the snare drum back in the middle. The tape is actually helping that a little bit too if I can drive the tape enough. The tape will help to sort that out. All right. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to grab the Omni channel. I'm not going to go too much on the saturation, just a little bit. All right. Now, I am going to high pass this because for this drum sound, there's not a lot. This is really a cymbal mic or stereo cymbal mics. So I'm going to go a little bit higher with that high pass. We don't have any tom-toms. There's no kick drum in this sound. And eventually we're going to knock the snare drum down. So, all right, so before I'm going to use the compressor that's in line here this time. Again, I'm going to address tone. So there's some, in the lower mids, there's some stuff that I don't like. I'll crank this so you can hear it. It just doesn't sound good. Immediately when I get rid of that, all of a sudden it just kind of sounds right. It's this. All right, that's gone. The other thing with these cymbals I'm using, they're a little bright, a little harsh. So somewhere around like 3.5 or 4K. Here's what I'm going to dump on a little bit. It's not going to make the cymbals sound less bright. It's going to let them sound a little less harsh. Listen to this. That harshness right there is what I want to get rid of. And that lives like 3.5, 4K, 3 to 4K. It depends on the cymbals you're using. So now all of a sudden, I just got a better cymbal sound. Again, this is all nips and tucks, man. It's a game of inches at this point. All right, so remember our 1176. We're going to kind of treat this like an 1176. You use it in FET mode. It's going to pull that snare drum down a little bit. But not only is it going to pull it down, now the great thing about this is now I have one knob I can pull to get the cymbals balanced. But what we're doing, not only are we pulling the sound of the snare drum down in the overheads, but we're also kind of fattening up the sound by hitting it with the compressor like we're hitting it. In fact, I'm going to hit it a little bit faster. Without it, you hear all that extra tone that we don't need? It's just kind of... I still hear a little bit, at least in these cans, I still hear a little of that in this snare drum. It's in that same spot. I'll let you hear it. Let's dump a little of that. All right, let's put this back in. And now we're going to bring the cymbals more into There you go. Oop. Stepped on my mic cable there. All right. And then I could probably bring back all some of the stuff that I've ducked. Also, since I moved that hi-hat over, I need to get the shaker off of the hi-hat, so I'm going to move it over to the right. Tambourine over to the left. So yeah, so that's a much better drum sound to start with. And we haven't even really used, there's no verb on that now. That's just the sound of the drums. The drums are going to get fatter with us putting the right kind of verb on there. Give them a little more room, give them a little more space, a little more girth. All of a sudden that's going to be a little bit more interesting. And, well, heck, let's just do that. You're sitting here, I'm sitting here. Might as well do this, right? So I'm going to make an aux. We're going to call this drum verb. And I'm going to put the drum verb in with this drum folder. I want everything kind of go into this. Now, I don't always do this, but for this mix, I definitely want to do that. Now, there's a lot of different plugins that we could use. This is the one that I'm loving a whole lot here lately. Where are you at, baby? There we go. Ocean Way. So again, I'm just going to use a stock standard preset so that you'll be able to take this and do something with it. So there's an A and a B room. We're going to take the A room, and you'll notice that one set of mics, the ones that are almost 15 feet out of the set of mics that are in there. We may change that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to listen to how this affects the sound of the snare drum, and then we'll worry about the overheads. So this is just putting the snare drum through this. Turn up these distant mics. There we go. And it's going to be a bit much at first because I want you to hear the sound of the verb. So then when I bring it in, I'll use a little of that. So what does that verb do for it? Kind of go on and off with this. You notice as we add more stuff, the drums are going to take more prominence in the mix. Well, that's going to get rebalanced as we adjust other things. I mean, I can push some things up. Get an idea of what that's going to do. Now you see why I start 5 down a lot of times. There's just a sense of room and space. It actually adds something in the low mid that's just makes the drums have a little bit more weight to them. Now you notice, and that's just in the and the snare drum. That's not even the overheads. So let's put the overheads into it. So now when we without it. You notice I didn't put the kick drum in there at all. Usually I don't, because I find it takes away from the punch of the kick drum. But since we don't have an outside mic and there's not a lot of the kick drum in the overheads, I am going to add it there. I'm going to put it into the room just a little bit. So that kick drum is going to excite that rim verb just a little bit. So now, only thing left to do now is we got this hi-hat. Let's deal with it real quick. There's a lot of it in the overheads already. But in case I want to use it, I am going to kind of set it up. So we're going to high pass this pretty high. Remember that harshness that we were talking about before? This? So now, yeah, just kind of focusing the sound, getting rid of the harshness. I'm just bringing in enough of it for presence. There we go. All right, so now I'll push that just a little bit. I'm gonna go a little closer to maybe 1.5K on the attack. Got a little more click there. Cool. So there you go. Yeah, so we sort of managed that snare drum now, sitting back in the middle, and we knocked it down enough so that really these overheads are really a glorified cymbal mic. So we just want to enhance that a little bit, make sure that we can have sort of an individual balance of the cymbals. Now, there's a splash in there that occasionally that thing kind of jumps out at me a little more than I might like. Once I get all my other instruments sitting there, I may automate those little splashes so that when that splash gets hit, it kind of dips a little bit. I don't know if I'll dip it in the actual stereo track or in the it's marked drum left. It actually ends up being drum right. Okay, yeah, it actually is the left coming in on the right. But I'll automate that, so maybe if that microphone's getting a little bit much of that splash, every time that splash gets hit just in that one side, I might automate it down just a little bit to smooth it out and make it a little less obvious. So there you go. Can react to Just Pretend by Bad Omens. I haven't even heard it. My reaction is I haven't heard it at all. But you know what I'm going to do for you? I'm going to write it down right now. Just Pretend Bad Omens. I'm going to write it down, and I'm going to go listen to it later. Maybe we'll live stream. We're going to live stream again tomorrow. So maybe I'll actually go and not maybe I will. I'll go take a listen to it. I'll take a listen to it, and I'll tell you what I think about it on the live stream tomorrow. How about we do that? If you tuned in for any of this, I really appreciate it. Man, we've been on here for almost an hour and 20 minutes. This is awesome. Thank you so much for everybody who has stuck with me for a while. The whole reason we started doing this in the first place was to talk about this thing. We opened the Fader Jocks Pro site officially today. And the Mixing Masterclass, the very first one that I put together for this site, is now up. It's a Mixing Masterclass #1, Contemporary Country Song. And this is an actual client track that I take you through the entire mix and everything that I did to deliver to this client a mix that they absolutely loved. And if you'll look right there in the bottom, see, there we go, right there in the bottom. If you use the promo code LAUNCH25, it'll immediately take 25% off of that. And you can get it for under $30. It's over 4 hours worth of class material. I go completely through this mix, just like what we've done today with these drums on this regular guy mix. I actually show you the things that I do day to day, week to week, month to month in different kinds of mixes. In this case, we're doing a country mix. And each one of these master classes, we're going to do one new one a month, at least. And it's going to be based on some real world track that I've worked on for a client. This isn't, Brian's opportunity to let you hear his songs and tell you what I would do in my home studio for my own self. I mean, this is, I'm taking 30 years worth of knowledge and experience and the actual music that I've worked on and gotten paid for, and turn them into classes for you so that you can see what is it exactly that I do when I mix stuff for people that gets them what I call a retail ready. We used to call it radio ready. Nobody listens to radio anymore. But I call it a retail ready product. So, how do you get great mixes that you can send to a mastering engineer and ensure that you're going to get mixes that translate well in a whole variety of systems and a lot of different environments, and that are just going to be competitive with everything else that's being put out. And I saw a stat the other day, like 2,000 new songs a day or something. It's ridiculous how many new songs hit the market every single day. And if you put out a song that the mix isn't great, people don't have an imagination. Most people that come across your music are not going to go, well, yeah, that's all right. I bet in a year his mixes are going to sound great, or his songs are going to sound great. They don't necessarily target it as mixes. They just know whether or not they like the sound of it, and if it sounds as good as the thing they were listening to before your song, and the thing that they're going to listen to after your song. And so, is it possible that you can make a great album at home? It's possible. Is it possible that you're going to make a great album at home all by yourself? Probably not. If you haven't studied and learned how to do this, if you haven't learned how to write, we're going to talk about this in a different video on YouTube, actually. I've got a video I'm putting together for the next couple of weeks. If you don't have a great song that is played well and recorded well, that's mixed well, then it's going to be virtually impossible to hold anyone's attention and keep them coming back. Well, if you've taken care of the talent part of it, where you're executing the song itself, whether it's you or your band, you've written a really good song. And it's been recorded really well. So you got 3 of those, but then it's not mixed very good. No one's going to notice that it's not a really good song. They're not going to notice that it was recorded really well. They're going to hear this thing sounds awful because it wasn't mixed very well. So you've really got to be careful as you're putting work into things. And the reason that I'm putting this course out is I would love for you to pay me to mix your stuff. Of course I would. But maybe you're not in a position to do that. I can certainly show you a lot of the tools and tricks and techniques and the things that I do to get great sounding mixes. You'd be really surprised. I mean, I just showed you today how I took drums that were 80% there and I got them across the finish line. Those are good sounding drums now. I could put those into that mix, and I know at this point when we finish the rest of this mix, this is going to sound good. In fact, I'm going to finish remixing all of this because I'm curious if I can beat the sound of the drums on this from when I mixed them in like 2001. I think this is from 2001. 2000, yeah, because we recorded and mixed this before I moved to the second studio. This was in the very first studio. So yeah, like 2000. It's been almost 24 years at this point, 24 years. I'm curious if I can beat the mix I did 24 years ago at this point. I'll have to come back on another live stream and let you see that, and we'll compare the two. But yeah. So that's everything I got for you, man. We're like an hour and a half into this, and I need to go see about maybe bathing some dogs or something, and then grabbing a quick bite to eat, and then I still got some drums to record for one of my clients that I've got to turn that stuff in by in the morning. So anyway, thank you so much. If you've sat through this entire live stream, and we've live streamed this thing to all the platforms today, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and even X, it's on. So it's the first time I've done a completely live stream on that. So thank you so much for watching. There's tons more. If you're on YouTube, there are tons more videos on this channel that are going to give you some great information specifically about mixing and mixing drums if you're into that. And there's more stuff to come. If you're not already on YouTube, make sure you subscribe, hit the subscribe button, give this live stream a thumbs up so that other people will be able to see it. Like the algorithm will go, well, you liked this. Maybe somebody just like you would like to see this. And if you do both of those, you got a better shot every time I put a video up. I'm putting up one next week that you'll get notifications about that video. If you're on Facebook, please make sure you leave a like there. Leave a comment. Let me know that you've watched. If you got a question on any platform, put it in the comments. I'll come back behind and I'll answer that for you. So please go to I have to look to the side to see where I'm pointing. FaderJocksPro.com. And today, the thing I didn't say, gee whiz, I should have led with this. So we're having a drawing for all the students that sign up for this class by the end of today. And I don't have it in front of me. Hang on, let me see if it's over here. Hang on a second. So, for anyone that's signed up for the course up to this point, and if you sign up by the end of today, if you sign up for that Mixing Masterclass number 1, we're giving away 2 of these. We're giving away small diaphragm condenser mic, studio microphone. If you don't have a small diaphragm condenser mic in your kit for in your microphone kit, you need a small diaphragm condenser mic. It just does so many really good things. I've used this exact same kind of small diaphragm condenser mic on a ton of stuff. Hi-hat, acoustic guitar, electric guitar cabinets. And if you were in a pinch and you needed to record a vocal and all you had was, say, an SM57, you could put this up instead and get a much better vocal than if you were singing into an SM57 or SM58. So this is about $140 value. Really nice small diaphragm condenser mic. You also get with that if you win one. There's a mic clip for it with a stand adapter and a windscreen if you're doing vocals and you need a windscreen, and it comes in this really nice padded pouch. So we're giving 2 of those away to someone in this very first class that signs up by the end of today. So make sure you sign up. We're giving away 2 of those, 1 to 2 different people. 2 lucky students are going to get a small diaphragm condenser mic that they can start using this week on their recordings. And we're going to give away 2 copies of this Schoeps Omni channel that I've been using all day today, actually. So it's a plugin I absolutely love. I'd like to put that plugin in the hands of at least 2 of you guys this week that have signed up for the course. So go to FaderJocksPro.com. Use that promo code LAUNCH25. It'll knock 25% off immediately. For under $30, you'll get over 40 hours worth. 4 hours. I think there's close to 40 hours worth of training on the entire site. There's over 4 hours worth of content in this Mixing Masterclass. Have I sold it enough? Have I convinced you enough? I'm telling you, I'm giving away everything I know. And I'm going to do it through FaderJocksPro.com. There's no sense of me hanging on to any of my knowledge and experience. I'm just going to start making it available to you. It would cost you over $400 to hang out with me for 4 hours and learn this stuff, but you can get it for under $30 if you go there. So anyway, that's it. That's all the selling I'm going to do, man. I've pushed it as hard as I can push it. You're either going to spend your money or you're not. And I just appreciate you watching. I appreciate the comments from everybody, especially on Twitch. That's awesome. That we had anybody watch on Twitch, because I haven't streamed there in probably a year, I think. If you're watching on YouTube, thanks so much. If you're on my Facebook, thank you. I appreciate you. And if you're watching on Twitter and X, what are you doing with your time watching? Anyway, go enjoy the rest of the sun. Until next time, be awesome to yourself. Be extra awesome to everybody that you meet. And until next time, I'll see you when I see you. Later.